beautiful. Mediterranean is a beautiful beach. I mean, all the way up the strip. There's a sports bar. And in this sports bar, like any other sports bar you would find around the world, you can go in there and get food and bar food and sit at a table and watch TV and watch a game or watch a movie. And on screen at the bar, they have full camera CCTV of the cameras mounted inside of Gaza on the fence line, the border. So you can go in there, and as you're enjoying your beer on the beach, listening to the waves crash and having a good time, 50 feet away, 25 feet to the gate, 25 feet in, there are people dying of starvation, children begging for food. It's barbaric. I don't care if you're Israeli, Palestinian, British, Nigerian, American. That's barbaric. It doesn't matter where you fall on the spectrum of any belief in life. That's barbaric. If someone would have told me that, I would not have believed it. You saw it. You saw a glimpse of it there. So then why would I do that? Why would I go work for them? So I served for 25 years in the military. I retired in March. When I retired, I had no ambitions of going into the contracting world. I had no ambitions of becoming a military contractor or a mercenary or going overseas again. I was tired of being gone. 25 years in the military, a quarter century of war, missed anniversaries, birthdays, the birth of children, first birthdays of children, things that you can never get back. I didn't want to leave anymore. I knew of what was happening in Gaza. I knew, of course, the situation. October 7th, Hamas, terrorists, food, right to self-defense, all these things you hear. And I'll tell you, at some point in the future, as we account for what has happened, the Western media must also be held accountable. Because they're lying to us. Again, wouldn't have known it had I not seen it with my own eyes. On Tuesday, the 13th of May, I got a phone call. Typically, I don't answer phone calls from phones that I don't know the number to, but it was a local number, so I answered it. UG Solutions is a contract company that was appointed under the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation as a private entity to provide armed security going into Gaza to distribute aid. Why? Because shortly after the first ceasefire fell apart and we went into hostility, Israel also banned the UN and UNRWA from going in to distribute food. They had 400 distribution sites, distributing food at 500 to 600 trucks a day. Imagine all of Chicago occupied and under siege, and the only way you could get food, water, medicine, formula, pampers, anything you need to live had to come in on trucks. That's an incredible feat. And UNRWA and the UN were doing it. Not anymore. So for a period of March until May 26th, you had no food going into Gaza. May 13th, I got this call, and the phone call was, we're UG Solutions. We're going to be part of the GHF. I was like, what's that? What's the GHF? The GHF just popped up out of nowhere. They weren't a company you heard of. They're not a household name. They were specifically recruiting individuals with a special operations background with combat experience to go into a very dangerous area to deliver aid at scale. I said I would like to think about it, and they said, well, we're leaving Friday. This was a Tuesday. So I didn't have a lot of time to think about it. So I said, well, I'm not going to give you an answer right now. If you need an answer now, the answer is no. He said, well, I'll call back tomorrow morning if that's okay. And I said, okay, I'll give you that. So I get on my whiteboard and I write down the pros and the cons and the facts and the assumptions. And 3 facts that I'll never forget that I knew that was my baseline. 1, human beings are starving. Human beings. Children, mothers, fathers, families, people are dying. Those images you saw are not fake. And that fact number 2, no food was going in. Regardless of the who, what, or why, no food was going in. 3, the only mechanism that was going to be allowed in the near future, outside of my control, was going to be the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. That was going to be the only entity that the Israeli government was going to allow into Gaza, period. So I took those facts and I thought to myself, I'll go. Wasn't looking for the money. In fact, I took a pay cut in going to there. So I'm 100% disabled, so I had to stop my disability. I had to leave my family once again. I had to go into a situation of which I had no training and no prior planning with, quite frankly, a bunch of buffoons. I learned that later. So I went. My reasons for going were that I felt people were in need, I can contribute, and I want to help. So that's why. The lens that I saw things through, so just so you have context, and that in 25 years of being in the military, 12 combat deployments, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, the southern Philippines, Tajikistan. Most of us probably couldn't point out Tajikistan on a map. It's north of Afghanistan. We're fighting war there. Most people don't even know that. The Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, fighting war. So when I got to Gaza and what I saw, and when I tell you that it is the most dystopian, apocalyptic nightmare, I mean it. I didn't go to war and sit on a base somewhere. I was in Fallujah. I was in Mosul. I was in Anbar province. I was in the Helmand province. I was in Raqqa, Syria, when ISIS fell and murdered everyone in the city. So the context that I'm bringing this to you from is not someone that saw it in a magazine or read it in a book or wrote a theory. I saw it, and the lens is 25 years of war to compare it to, and it is the worst that I have ever seen in my life. What I saw in Gaza broke me. As a father, as a husband, as a human being. What made it worse is the realization that without any discretion, with a notion of impunity and just entitlement, the United States is involved. Hand in glove, handmaidens in genocide. Not bystanders, directly involved. Every bomb that drops in Gaza comes from us, every one of them. Every artillery shell that drops and kills families comes from us. That's a fact. Not whitewashing it, it's a fact. We aren't only complicit in the killing, we are complicit in the genocide. We are complicit in the spreading of disease, famine, and death. And I don't mean complicit in just because we're not doing anything. We're funding. The United States government, with our tax dollars, right now, as the United States government can't open our own government because we can't pass a budget, we're giving Israel $3.8 billion, it's with a B, to continue their occupation of Gaza. We're all paying for it. So that's why I went, and that's kind of the background as to what I saw when I got there.
So, like I said, as an aid worker, we saw it from another angle, okay? Anthony has one kind of background, we have another kind of background. Sometimes they overlap, but we saw the red flags, and to the point where I've sent about eight trucks in so far into Gaza over the past 2 years. Some of them take months to get in. As you all know, the border's open, they close, trucks get there, they get turned around, and it's just really a horrible situation. And every time since GHF had opened up, I'd have donors asking me, Is your aid going through GHF? Absolutely not. We never gave our aid to GHF. Some organizations did. Most of us did not. We absolutely refused because we knew aid was being weaponized, food was being weaponized, medicine was being weaponized. And I know, Anthony, when we talk some more, you're gonna get into what kind of aid was being distributed or was not being distributed. So I'll let Anthony discuss that because he was the one who was there. For the ones not sending aid through GHF, we also have a list. Everything has to be approved by Israel, period. And I'm gonna tell you from my experience as an aid worker, working in over 45 refugee camp sites in the past 11 and a half years, Anthony, you might have another experience with this. I have never worked in a situation where the government told me you are not allowed to distribute this kind of aid, ever. It was, what are the needs? We're gonna distribute it. That's it. The government's never told us you're not allowed to do that. The only time I've seen it, and just as a disclaimer, is with medication, and that's only because certain prescriptions aren't allowed. You know, that is one thing. But when you're talking about food, hygiene, water, the basics, never ever been told by a government, never been limited, nothing. This is the first time I've seen anything like this, and to this extent, like Anthony was saying. So, and also I just want to throw this in there as a reminder for all of us. You know, we talk about the people starving in Gaza, but a lot of times we have to be really careful with the words that we use. People aren't, yes, they're starving, but when we speak, we have to show intentionality. So they're being starved, not starving. But of course, we talk like this, but I just want you all to remember that we want to show that this is 100% intentional. This is not a natural disaster that's taking place. This is not because there's a drought or an earthquake happen and we can't get in. We can get in. It is 100% intentional, which is a war crime. So, continuing on with the questions. Anthony, you had said one of your most well-known accounts from GHF was when you were told that Israel is the client, and you never say no to the client. Can you please tell us the story behind that?
So, humanitarian assistance is an operation. Food is just simply a part of it. Aid and assistance are simply components of a larger scale operation. By international law and by international standards, humanitarian assistance must meet 4 critical principles. It must be independent, it must be neutral, it must be unilateral, and it must be humane. So, in a nutshell, what that means is aid cannot be given in a quid pro quo way. You do this, we'll give you food. You go there, we'll give you food. You behave, we'll give you food. Can't do that. You can't be giving aid that favors one side over another. And you can't choose who gets it. And that it must be done in a way that you aren't relying on sources that can then control the aid and violate the humanitarian principles of aid. Humane means it has to address the suffering. If people are dying of starvation, it does no good to bring them hats. It has to address the suffering. Humanitarian aid in Niger is different than what it is in Sudan, different than what it is in the Philippines, different than what is the need in Gaza. This is why it takes professionals like the United Nations, UNRWA, people that do this who are professionals. It's not an amateur game. So when we got into Gaza, on the 24th of May, we were escorted by the IDF into southern Gaza, Rafah, which if you see Rafah years ago, it's beautiful. It's gone now. It's not a building that stands. Level to the ground. City, gone. I don't mean Dresden. I don't mean Berlin. Gone. If you were to go to Rafah today, you would see nothing. Where a city once flourished. When we were brought to the sites, it immediately stood out to me that the distribution sites that we were going to provide aid to, remember I said 400 distribution sites? GHF only operated 3. 3. For 2.1 million people. The 400 sites barely met the need. 3. And these weren't super sites or mega locations. No, just 3. 550 to 600 trucks a day just to sustain the population. We're doing 12. And when I saw the location of the sites, that they were placed directly in the middle of ongoing combat operations, Operation Gideon's Chariots. It's the Israeli offensive in the south to clear central Gaza. Now they're conducting Operation Gideon's Chariots 2. It's the operation to clear Gaza City, which was supposed to stop in the ceasefire. It is not. They're still conducting operations. There's no ceasefire. So that stood out to me in terms of international law, law of armed conflict, and the Geneva Convention. So when you think about international humanitarian law, the Geneva Conventions codify in there obligations in war. There are rules in war. What's more important is that the Geneva Convention, both the United States and Israel are signatory to them. It's not an option. You don't get to follow it when it's convenient. So when I say war crimes, you heard me say it in the video, war crimes. People may think, oh, war crimes aren't beheading or wearing a necklace of ears around your neck or being psycho. That certainly is a war crime. A war crime is defined by any violation of the protocols of the Geneva Convention and the laws of armed conflict. Period. I didn't make those rules. We did, the United States. Israel signed on to them in 1952. We are violating every aspect of it. To place distribution sites to give human beings, unarmed combatants on the battlefield, food or water or medical attention, and force them to have to move through an active combat zone to get that food is a war crime. To displace the population in order to get that food is a war crime. For an occupying force to then control what goes in and out and not allow food, water, and need, not because there's good behavior or because, you stop attacking us, we'll do this. To withhold that is a war crime. So immediately seeing this, having 25 years of experience in war, I was like, we can't do this. And I was told that, well, we've got to get up and operate. We have to do something. We have to start. Okay, well, this is not a good start. And on the very first day of distribution, May 26, 2025, a day I'll never forget, 34,000, just in the south. Remember, Gaza is broken into corridors and sections. So in the southern corridor in Rafah, in Mawasi, along the coast, 34,000 starving human beings that hadn't eaten a meal for months or had clean water were released from the holding point along the coastal corridor and rushed to site number 1, where we were. One site. The amount of people rushing towards the site shook the earth, literally. And when 34,000 people ascend onto a location at once, there's nothing that we could have done about it. If they wanted to kill us, kidnap us, trample us, rip us apart, there's nothing we could do. Standing there on that morning, I thought to myself, because of all the propaganda, Hamas, 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 Palestinians hate us all. I was like, this is where it ends, Tony. And a good night. See you later. And as they descended upon the site, all I saw were thank yous and smiles and begging for food. Not a single person armed, not a single person harmed, not a single threat. Just human beings wanting to eat. And there was only 9,000 people worth of food there. So 25,000 went without. 25,000 people. From that point, I then realized, well, this is the problem. I brought that to the leadership again. But I also brought to the leadership, we messed up somewhere in the coordination because the water trucks didn't come in. We're not giving people meals. We're not bringing them to a site and giving them a hot meal like you see what UNRWA was doing with food kitchens and feeding hot meals. We're giving them a box And in that box is a bag of dried rice, a bag of dried lentils, some flour, some cooking oil, and some beans, all dry. You gotta have water to cook it. And we're giving them no water. So when I brought that to the attention of the leadership, to answer the question on the IDF, we work for the IDF, I was like, there's no water. Oh, we're not giving them water. I mean, we're not giving them water. It's not in the contract. It's not in the contract. So when I tell you that the food used as bait and the displacement and the lack of water is that it's not a lack of capacity or capability, it's intentional. If I ask you to do something for me and we sign a contract, you're bound to do what's in it and you're bound to not do any more because I'm paying you. I'm going to give you $5 to go do this and you're going to do $5 worth of work, period. I'm not giving you the resources to do more than $5 worth of work. That's what a contract is. So as the United States government operating to bring food into Gaza under a contract by the IDF, if anyone's heard of the Coordinating Office of the Governments of the Territories, it's called COGAT. It's an acronym, C-O-G-A-T. It falls under the Ministry of Defense in Israel. They had the contract, a written contract. You will only deliver this much food to this many sites with no water for this period of time on these days under these conditions, period. It's a contract. So, further down the road, site number 3 was in northern Communist, very congested, very bad location because the entrance and the exit was one and the same. Imagine thousands of people coming in and trying to leave through the same door in a combat zone where they're starving. Not a good sight. And on that day, the 8th of June, there were so many people on the site. And these sites, they weren't developed, they were austere, wrapped, surrounded in razor wire, like concentration camps. And as they're cramming into the site, these 3 children were getting pushed into this wall, into this razor wire. And this Palestinian man lifted them up to put them onto the dirt berm so they weren't getting crushed. None of them had shoes on. One of the kids didn't have a shirt, no food. They didn't have rocks or sticks or guns. They weren't Hamas, they weren't terrorists. Starving children who a man put onto a dirt berm so they didn't die. And this Israeli officer from Kogat, a lieutenant colonel, similar to my rank when I served, comes up, standing next to me in the operations center, and he says, "Get them off of there, get them off." And I said, well, because we're watching the full motion video, and I was like, well, they're taking care of it, they got it. They're working it out. Get them off, that's a security threat. No, that's a security threat, there's 3 children. It's not a threat, they're taking care of it. He goes back to his desk where they have a radio that communicates directly to the IDF in the field. He speaks into it. I didn't know what he said, I don't speak Hebrew. But the American, I don't know if y'all are aware, but there are Americans that serve in the IDF. Not Israelis that have some American money, Americans. The dude in that operations center was from Boston, serving in the IDF, dual citizenship. If an American did that, if an American left and said, I'm gonna go join the Mexican army, you would lose your citizenship. We know that, but it's okay for Israel. So this guy speaks Hebrew, also speaks English, he's from Boston. Almost like this idea of going back to the motherland, like in World War II, right? American German soldiers. So he was like, yeah, he just told, you might want to talk to your guys and have them stand back because he just told the snipers to take out these kids. And I was like, what? So this officer comes back up and he's standing there and he's like, looking at the screen. I was like, did you just say to the snipers at Site 3 to shoot these children? Well, if you can't take care of it, then I will. And I was like, no, time out. Time out in the job, joint operations center, it's where you run things. I was like, stop. We're not doing this. You're not going to shoot at children. 1, we're not shooting children. 2, if you miss, you're going to kill someone else. 3, you might kill an American. 4, you might do all 3. You might kill a child and another person and another. No. In that discourse, these children ran off the berm, jumped off the site, and ran away. So we thankfully didn't have to come to the conclusion of what that would be. But the operations director for the company Safe Reach Solutions over me, who's in that operations center, says, "Hey, Tony." I'm like, "Hey, what's up, Kevin?" We step outside and he looks me right in the eye and he says, "Never say no to the client." I was like, what do you mean, the client? Like, I thought we were here as a unilateral, independent, neutral body serving aid to starving people. What client? We work for the IDF, period. You don't say no. Whatever they want to do, you either say yes, or you say nothing. I was like, okay, so, got it on the water thing, don't agree. Got it on the lack of food thing, that's a problem. But you're telling me that if they want to shoot children, we do nothing. It's on them. It's not our deal. No, I'm not. Not what, no, So that's when I learned unequivocally, without a doubt, that we were not there to distribute humanitarian aid in an impartial, unilateral, independent, neutral, humanitarian way. We weren't. We were there as an appendage of the operations of the IDF, as a supporting operation, if you will. In military operations, you have a main effort, the Army fighting, and you have supporting operations, logistics, beachhead, aircraft, whatever. We were simply a supporting operation of the greater offensive. And our role was to displace the population from central Gaza at these food sites in the south, only 3 of them, all the way in the south. They weren't just distributed, they were in the south. So if I'm a Palestinian and I wake up and I get a message that says, oh, site number 2 is open today, that's your day because you're in this corridor. Well, I tell the family, I'm gonna go get food. We haven't eaten in a few days, we're starving. The able-bodied male, right, it's a journey to go through minefields and bombs and barbed wire, war, make the journey. Well, when you get there, you don't get to go home. You go there and you get your food, and you try to leave, nope. You're going to the UN encampment. You never go home. So what happens to that family? They gotta go looking for their family member, or they come to get food on their own. UN encampment. We were there to force the displacement of the population. And it was part of the operational plan, because I saw it. At that point is when I could not stay anymore. I had made up my mind. And it was so clear to me then, without a shadow of a doubt, without an inkling of a question, that the United States, on behalf of a foreign government, is complicit in war crimes, crimes against humanity, and starving and displacing and killing human beings, the majority of which are women and children. And that's a fact. It's a cold, hard fact, and it kills me to say it, but it's on.
Anthony had mentioned that professional aid workers should have been the one obviously doing the distributions. So I know some of you are probably thinking, why is Rasha up here? She wasn't there. Valid thought. The reason why I wanted to include myself in the presentation with Anthony here and back in Columbia, Missouri, where we were on Monday, was because aid workers tend to get overlooked. We tend to fall through the cracks. The stars, if you want to use that word, or the attention is on mainly the medical professionals, obviously because of the work that they have on their plate in these kind of situations, or it's military. The aid workers tend to get overshadowed. Yet we have one of the most dangerous jobs that you could think of, because we are in the actual field out on the ground. We are not restricted to any type of location. Even though nothing in Gaza is safe, we know this. They've attacked hospitals, they've attacked UN locations, they've attacked schools, so nothing is actually safe. But medics and aid workers who are out in the actual field have one of the most dangerous jobs that you could do at that time, because you are fully exposed. This happened last year. One or two of my trucks were at the warehouse in Gaza. Our ground partners in Gaza were on their way to go pick up their aid. 1 or 2 of them died. For sure, 1 of them. I know that much. They got killed getting my aid truck And there's nothing we can do about it. There's no accountability, there's nothing. So when we're talking about a site like GHF that is guised as an aid distribution site, but it's really veiled colonialism, veiled genocide, and you hire mercenaries who have weapons. I don't carry weapons on me when I'm doing aid work. I need to concentrate on doing the distribution, not sitting there worrying about if my gun's gonna accidentally go off because I'm trying to hand someone a box or go into someone's tent. That is not my job as an aid worker. Also, when I come in with weapons, that sort of breaks, we have an issue with neutrality, impartiality, this changes the entire atmosphere. I've had armed security in some of my distribution because we needed it. That's something different. But to hire someone like Anthony for him to go in and do quote unquote distribution, which I know he's going to talk about how it really ended up being, we're setting a very dangerous precedent, and actually that's a question we're going to cover at the end. What does the weaponization of aid and the privatization of aid distribution mean to the future of humanitarian aid work? So we will continue the questions now. So Anthony, you and I have spoken several times about